Hello, welcome to a tutorial for how to get started using card.co. This video is going to be primarily focused around people that play the online game Final Fantasy XIV for creating character cards. However, it should be generic enough that anyone who wants to get started using this application can do so. So the first thing you'll want to do is go to card.co and create an account. It will then bring you to this screen with a red banner that asks you to verify. Click that button. It will send you an email. Verify your email, and you'll arrive at this page. You can get to this page from the main card.co page by clicking on Open Dashboard. So to get started, we'll click on this button in the top right called New Site, and it'll give you a whole lot of options that feel a little bit overwhelming. Most of these require you to pay. There are some that don't, and if you want to mess around with some of those, you can. However, I think that even the ones that don't require a pro subscription to card, there is still some monetization that they force upon you. The only way that I found that is guaranteed to be free is by clicking on this rather innocuous button called Blank Canvas. And this will bring you to a new page that all it says is nothing here yet. And if you mouse around the page, you can see that some things get highlighted. And the things that do are this box called page and a box called text. Now, page is a collection of all of the elements that appear on this website. So everything that you add, all text, images, links, etc. that you add will be encompassed within this page box. They can go outside of the page. This is just a representation of the content. If you click on anything on this page, it'll bring up a detail box here on the left. If you don't like it being on the left, you can click on this right arrow to move it right, and left to move it back. I like it on the right, so I'm going to keep it there. And there's a whole lot of different options that you can do with this page. You can change what it's like. The style, I don't really know what intricacies some of these styles do, so I tend to keep it on default. The position is where on the page it appears, so it starts centered, but you can move it into the top left or middle left, wherever you would like. The width slider obviously changes how wide the element is. Again, because the content on your website can actually go outside of the page, this is not too important, but some things are restricted, so you may or may not need to mess around with this width slider. Padding indicates how much space there is in between the outermost edges of your content and the border of the page, and the size increases or decreases the font size of your text. Under contents, you have the alignment. So within this page, you can see that the text is centered. If I change this to left, then it moves onto the left side of the page, even though the page itself is still centered. So contents indicates the alignment of what's inside of your page. And spacing will change how much space there is in between each of those things. That's about all there is for page. Before we start getting into adding elements, you can also click outside of the page and you'll get the background. It starts off as a single color of almost perfect white with no pattern. These are things that you can change, so you can make it a gradient that moves between one color, which you can pick from, and another. There are some percentage sliders to tell you where exactly on the gradient line, this color should end and start. So you can see I dragged this up higher and most of the page is now red. If I drag it back down back to 0, then it's kind of half and half. The same will go here. If I drag this, then the gradient is predominantly blue and most of the change is over here in the corner. The angle slider will determine where on the page your first color starts. So if I have it at 180 degrees, then the color is directly on top and the second is directly on the bottom. If I scoot this over to 270, not 270, to whatever 90 plus 80 is. Thought that was 270, but that doesn't look quite right. Maybe it is. It'll be on the right. You get the idea. You can also set it to be an image that you can upload or pick from their predefined assets in their library. And you can change the position of the image in the background, whether or not it's tiled. So let me just grab something here as an example. We can position it so that its top left corner matches up with the top left corner of your screen, or the bottom left. You can see tiling is off right now, so we could tile it. This might actually be This image is a bit too large to see tiling. Never mind. There we go. So tiling means that any blank space outside of the image itself will be filled again with that same image. So if you have one image that you want duplicated across the entire screen, you can mess around with tiling and with size. You can also indicate what color you want the transparency. This will only show up if you have tiling off. And that wasn't the right one. What was it? Stretch? No. Was it stretch? No, I don't remember. Fit? There we go. So that color on the right there can be changed. If I change this to red, and this will be red. This is the transparency. And tiling will remove that transparency. So these two things will contradict each other. You can have an overlay of a color or a gradient. Works the exact same way as the background color normally. And you can have a pattern. So I can have a square of grids, and I can change how much space there is in these grids and how thick the lines are. Lots of options for the background. You can also have the background be a video or a slideshow of images, although the slideshow looks like it is locked behind Pro. I'm going to go back to the dashboard and get a fresh new site before we continue on. So that should be everything you need to know about the generic page itself. Now we can start focusing on adding content to it. So there is a text box here by default. When you click on it, you can change what it says over on this window here. You can also change, this information is primarily for screen readers. These headings and titles and paragraph information are primarily used for applications that will read out a website and dictate it to blind people or people with difficulty reading. So while not strictly necessary, it is useful if you want your website to be accessible to a lot of people. Typically the first one that you would make is the site title, and then main headings, subheadings, paragraphs. Hopefully that is pretty self-explanatory. You can also change the appearance. So you can change the color of the text to be whatever you'd like. You can change the font. There's a lot of options. I'm not going to go through them, but I'll just pick one at random. That looks fun. You can change the size of the text using this slider, whether or not it's bold, which this weight is also dependent on the font. So if the font doesn't have a bold option, then it won't be bold. And I'm just going to go back to the default because I know that the default has bold. So there's a lot of different bold options, and some fonts will support them and some don't. I found that the default font will be normal, anything medium or less, and will be bold, anything semi-bold or greater. There may be some fonts that allow you to be more granular. Not sure. Line spacing here will change how much distance there is in between different lines in the text box, and letter spacing, how much space there is in between each letter. You can change the appearance of the text so that everything shows up in lowercase or uppercase or small caps. Small caps basically means that everything is capitalized, but the letters that are actually capitalized in this text box will show up in a larger font size. So it looks like the W is capitalized and the rest aren't, even though they all are. This is pretty common for titles. Usually you would not want to use small caps for anything other than a title or a header of some kind. And then you can align the text in the same way that you can align the text box itself within the page. You can also add a drop shadow. By default, there is none. You can change the color and the transparency of it, as well as what angle the shadow is cast at from the center of the letter, how far away it gets cast, and how blurry it is. So that's pretty much all the information you need to know for text boxes. So how do we get more content on this screen? If you look up at the top, there's a few buttons. This one gives you a few options I showed before. We'll get to those later. This button publishes your site and makes it accessible as an actual website. This button changes to be a mobile view. This button will run any animations if you've set them. An undo and redo button. And then this last one is the one that we're interested in. And this will give you a list of all the types of things that you can add to a card page. So you can add text, you can add a bulleted list, you can insert an image or buttons, videos, links, etc. All of this is fairly intuitive to work with. It'll pop up a little bar on the side here that will allow you to customize each different element in the same way that we worked with text. So you can upload an image. That's pretty much enough information to start working on. You can drag and drop these elements above and below each other, and in order to customize the layout of your page. There's only really one other main thing that I would have to remark about, and that is the control element. The control element defines how your app sort of interacts as different web pages. So I'm going to grab this guy and drag him up here. And in the type here, you'll see that you have a few options. Section break, header marker, footer marker, and scroll point. I'm going to start with the header marker. Now you can only have one control that is a header marker. And what this means is that everything above this line will show up at the top of every page that you create with this tool. So I'll have the word text. Actually, maybe Should swap that down there. Every single page that I visit will have this work in progress text at the top. And I can do the exact same thing if I create another section and change the type to footer. Everything underneath the footer will appear at the bottom of every page that I can visit. So that's headers and footers. And then the next one is sections. And a section is how you actually create separate pages out of one single layout. So if we scroll down, we can give a section a name. The home, like the landing page for your site is called home. And you can hide the header and footer in each of these sections if you want to explicitly call out that this shouldn't show up every time. And so how the pages work is that all of the content underneath this home line until the next control element, either a footer or another section, will become its own page. So I'm going to add some more text here. Whoops. I'm going to say home. And we'll add in another section here. We'll call it about. And add in some more text underneath that that says about. I'm going to get rid of this image just to reduce the amount of space. I kind of wish that that you could reset the appearance, because this is actually kind of hard to look at now. Oh well. So now we have two pages on this site. We have a home page and we have an about page. But how do you navigate between them? Well, you can put hashtag home at the end of the URL, but that's kind of clunky. So you can link to it by adding in a links section, which will pop up over here on the right. And it will have one link by default, which just goes to some nonsense URL. If we set the URL to the exact same name as the section, then this will link to that page. So I can change the label that's displayed here to say home and home for the URL. If we minimize that and add, we can add another label, and we'll have, another link, and we'll have this link go to the about page. I'm going to change this text to say footer, just so it's clear. And this is enough information for you to be able to create multiple pages and be able to navigate between them. So if we go up here to publish, in order to create this into an actual website, then we need to give it a title, which will be the information that is shown up here on your tab. So I'm just going to call it example. It needs a description. Again, I'm just going to call it example for now. There are a few different options that you can have. By default, you would just want to create it at .card.co. If you're really fancy and have a pro membership, you can use a custom URL or save it as a template. I don't quite know what templates are, but for the purposes of this tutorial, leaving that as it is fine. And then you can change this to be whatever you'd like. So I'm going to type in, I don't know, example is probably in use, yeah. Whoop, okay. I don't know what happened there. There we go. Example tutorial. And you can, it looks like the only option if you don't have a pro account is card.co. So it'll tell you if the text that you've entered here is available. If it's not, got to change it, obviously. But this one was available, so I'm going to hit publish. And it'll give you a progress bar telling you how long it's taken. And there we go. Our website now exists. We can click on this button to view the site. And it will go to the name that you entered, .card.co. Eventually. Okay. Well, this is obnoxious. There we go. It took some time. So now, on our actual page, you can see that we have the header, we can have the home text, and we have the footer. And you'll notice that back in our editor, we don't have the word about in here. However, you can click on the link about, and it will change to show the word about here instead of home. And you can swap back and forth as if these were actually different web pages. And that should be enough information for you to get started creating your own card. Like I said, I tried to keep it as generic as possible so that anyone could use it. So I hope this was helpful and useful. This took me about 3 or 4 tries of going through this page and looking through and tinkering with all of the settings and messing around with things in order to figure this out. But it's fairly simple once you've finally got the hang of it. Yeah, so I hope this has helped you out. Let me know if there's anything else that you need in the comments, or if we know each other on Final Fantasy, send me a tell. And yeah, have a good one.